Hello, friends. Robert Bevitt here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today, the first day of 2023, we will be talking about the spell Thunderclap.
You know what my New Year's resolution is, Bob?
What's that?
My New Year's resolution is to hate spells less. I don't know if I'm going to succeed, but I'm going to
Man,
try.
this is going to be a tough one to start with.
Oh, agreed.
This is,
Thunderclap, evocation cantrip. Got a cast time of an action. It's got a range of self 5-foot radius. You create a burst of thunderous sound which can be heard 100 feet away. Each creature other than you within 5 feet makes a con save, taking a d6 thunder damage on a failed save.
this
This
is
is
similar to the last one we did, Earth Tremor.
yes, very similar, and actually way better because it
It
is
doesn't actually harm you.
yes, and it doesn't cost you spell slots. It just takes your cantrip. This is notably also a bard, druid, sorcerer, warlock, wizard, artificer spell. So like almost every class that can full cast gets this, which is nifty. It's just clerics are not here for some reason. I guess because they get Word of Radiance, so that's like the mirror of this. It does the same thing as a radiant damage. I like these effects, kind of. I like these effects. I think they're probably about as good as Acid Splash, and that's not a spell that I think anyone's ranting or raving about. At the same time, these have way better ceilings and way worse floors. So this will be like a spell that's great whenever you're in the thick of it with 10 kobolds and you're like, everyone take a d6 damage, and sometimes some of them die. Sometimes you roll a 1 and you're like, well, that did nothing at all. But that's
yeah,
cantrips.
because they have to make a saving throw and nothing happens.
Yep, that's cantrip life, though. Most
Yeah.
cantrips have the save or nothing. It's kind of like you're just missing with an attack roll. It's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. If you're going to take a damaging cantrip, there are better ones than this. There are a lot better ones than this. On every single class that is mentioned here, there are better damaging cantrips than this. Frostbite is going to be a ranged d6 damage option that also imposes a disadvantage on attack roll, and that's in most of these classes. Vicious Mockery is a d4 with the same text. That's way better than this. As far as like damaging one thing, if you're talking about damaging an area, like I said, Acid Splash hits 2 things for a d6 damage over a 30-foot range. That seems better most of the time. Same time, it can never hit 4 or more things. So let's say you're deciding to play a suicidal warlock that wants to dive into hell and fight demons, punch like mono punch them in the face. Thunderclap does a giant area of effect damage. I don't know exactly what characters want this. I've played melee like Gish form of warlock, wizards, and sorcerers before. I played a College of Swords bards once. I have yet to do like a really committed frontline druid build. Most of the time I'm doing some kind of shenanigans with summoning magic, or I did the wildfire thing before. I've DM'd for all of this though. I've never seen this be really impactful. I've seen Word of Radiance be impactful against specifically zombies, because zombies don't regenerate whenever they get radiant damage dealt to them, and that is a really important thing in a Undead Apocalypse themed campaign that I was running. But like your average table, I don't think is going to find Thunderclap and transitively Word of Radiance being all that relevant.
I realize it's only a cantrip. Having said that, though, it feels like it's an area of effect that's a lie, just because that area is so tiny.
It's everything within 5 feet of you is a way to think of it, right? Like every creature around you.
But that's, I don't think you're ever. I mean, I guess if you purposely get up in their face, like you say, all right, these 2 creatures are within 10 feet of each other, I'm going to hop between them and Thunderclap. But it just feels like there's better things you could do with your time.
Yeah, Acid Splash hits both those creatures most of the time, right? Like that's because they're within 5 feet of each other most of the time. Like rarely is that 10-foot area the one you really care about. So I'll say like I'm gonna be referencing Word of Radiance because that's the spell I've played with a lot more. I've seen players play with it a lot more. I've seen creatures. I think the most I've seen hit with a Word of Radiance was 7, and that was a cleric diving into a swarm of zombies. So like it was a very high risk moment. They were an Asimar, so they had the giant area of effect damage around them going up too. So the objective was to get inside of them all and just disintegrate them, because they knew they all had around 5 HP. Because that's how they know I tend to run my monsters. So they took a high risk play to pay it off, and they incinerated a bunch of zombies around them, and it was sweet. That is not happening almost ever with Thunderclap, nor is it happening at like 99% of D&D tables. I think you will be lucky to hit 3 things with this, and if you're hitting 3 things with this, you're doing a d6 to each of them, and it's like, yeah, that was marginally better than some of the worst cantrips in the game.
D6 to them.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get in a position where you're going to, target 3 of them is difficult enough.
Yeah.
For them to all fail their saving throws, that's a lot bigger ask.
It's like, so if you compare this to a single target damage cantrip, you compare this to Fireball. Firebolt only ever hitting one thing. It's granted it's hitting from safer distance, right? You're not risking your life for that. But it's doing a maximum of a d10 damage. This hypothetically is doing 8d6 damage for a cantrip at its peak. Like the best you can get out of this spell is 8d6 damage.
That's never happened.
Correct. Like I said, I literally played the gigantic mob of zombies, and the highest number we could get to was 7.
Yeah.
But like, and that's where that spell shines its absolute brightest. In the case of Thunderclap, I think you will be very lucky to get 3 creatures with it. I think 2 will be pretty consistently doable. I think less than 2 is going to be most common, and you don't care to cast this if it's only hitting 1 creature.
Right.
It also doesn't help that you can't shape your allies out of it. It doesn't help that you're going to be incidentally doing d6 damage to your fires and stuff whenever you're doing the position to try and get as many things as possible sometimes. It doesn't help that you can typically expect, like I said, Acid Splash to function the same thing from a safer distance. All of that is to say, I don't think this belongs on the vast majority of character sheets.
Now, for a spell like this, I want either a better area of effect or I want a condition.
Yeah.
And this gives me no conditions, almost no area of effect, and it makes a big sound. Lets everybody else know where you are.
Yeah. Anything up to 100 feet away is like, oh, hey, what has exploded? What keeps exploding? What's spamming explosions? Yeah. I don't think this spell is uncastable. I don't think that this spell is a cantrip that you can even say is like that much worse than a lot of the other cantrips. I think if you can ever get 3d6 damage out of this, this is the best cantrip in the game in that moment, right? Like compared to all of the other ones, that damage is leagues better than the other cantrip damage you can get. The nice thing is when this does scale at 5th, the scales multiplicatively, right? If you can hit multiple creatures with it, it goes from 66 with 6 creatures to 12d6 with 6 creatures. For a cantrip, those dice are really good. If you get to 17th level, a cantrip doing 46 to 6 things, that's 24d6 damage with a cantrip. That's like, it's at that tier, not nearly as good as Fireball or any other options you have on the table that are readily available, but that is like way more damage scaling wise than any of the other cantrips can ever put out, because it multiplicatively goes up with the number of things you can hit. At the same time, you don't want to be doing that ever. You've got better things to be spending your actions on than trying to get in a bad spot for you most of the time and then taking an action that does an okay amount of damage, but not a great amount of damage. Yeah, Thunderclap is, I think you'll find there'll be like the occasional Warlock Wizard build, the occasional like Draconic Sorcerer build where you'll be the front line, where you'll have like a high con score and a high dex, and then your casting modifiers like your secondary, and then you're looking to do like some hybrid Gish stuff, but you don't necessarily want to commit to weapons because they're pretty bad. So you take this and a weapon, and then you have like a middling road where you're never really great at either, but you do pretty decent AoE and you do pretty decent attacks for the first 3 levels of the game. And then the moment you hit 3rd level, you're never doing any of this ever again. Or at least you're using it way less frequently. That's, I think, the realistic home for like Thunderclap. I don't think anywhere else this spell's getting cast. I don't think you're going to be... I think you shouldn't expect to hit more than 2 creatures with this on an average adventuring day. If you hit 3, you can say that was great. I hit a 3rd creature. But like you said, probably one of them is failing it of the 3, or probably 2 of them are failing it of the 3. If 2/3 things pass your save, or fail your save, you're pretty happy with that, and that's going to happen most of the time. So
yeah, there's a wealth of other cantrips. I can't see ever choosing this one.
I also would say, like, I would recommend Poison Spray over this every day of the week. That's a 10-foot range D12 cantrip. It's really volatile, and that D12 scale way better than this does. It only hits 1 target ever, but like if you want to play the frontline character, I would much rather have the D12 damage dice than the D6 one, even if it hits an area.
You just want an excuse to use the D12.
I do. It's not a secret anymore that I want as many reasons possible to roll the weird dice. I do think it's novel to note that, like, I like this as a cantrip in that it very clearly designates the casters are better at doing area of effect damage, and they will be rewarded for it comparatively to the marshals. I think that's a novel idea. I don't think this execution of it necessarily nails that. I think this needs to be ranged. I think this needs to hit a 15-foot area for it to start being like, I get why this exists now. Even like, again, Acid Splash, it's 2 creatures within 10 feet or 5 feet of each other, even giving us like a 10-foot radius where it hits 4 squares. I think that, or 10-foot diameter where it hits 4 squares, that's more in line with where I think this needs to be for it to start feeling like the difference between the casters and the non-casters. Where it is now, I just think it's too clunky. I don't think real characters can get much use out of it.
Yeah, I agree with all what you said. If it was a range spell rather than centered on self, then we'd be having a different conversation.
Mhm.
But it's not.
Correct.
All right. Well, what do you got for this one?
I think you're going to rate it lower than me. I think this is a 3. I think it's a 3 because it's a harmless damage spell that on its peak is doing more damage than the average cantrip does. I don't think you ever need more than 1 damaging cantrip, and I think that characters can get away with getting 2d6 damage out of it without going into like ridiculously risky situations. I think its ceiling is slightly higher than most of the damaging cantrips, and its floor is quite a bit lower. I don't think that it's going to feel impossible to use in the first 3 levels of the game. I think past that, much like most of the other damaging cantrips, you're never casting it ever again. So that's what I think it's good enough, and that's a 3 for me.
Well, it's not good enough for me, but it's not absolute garbage. I'm going to give it a 2.
Fair.
All right. Well, that was, what was it? Thunderclap.
Thunderclap.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Let's make 2023 a good one. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.